I used to think God showed up only during spiritual moments, at church, during prayer, or when I was in desperate need. But I've come to realize something life-changing. God's presence isn't limited to holy places or high-stake situations. He's with me in traffic, in silence, in laughter, in conflict, in failure, and in breakthrough. His presence is not occasional, it's constant. And when that truth finally sank into my soul, everything changed. I started waking up differently. Not with dread or rushing into the chaos of my to-do list, but with a quiet whisper in my spiriting, God is here, not just in a metaphorical way, but really tangibly here, with me, watching, guiding, loving. I began to walk into rooms with more confidence, not because I had all the answers, because I wasn't walking in alone. It wasn't always like that. I used to compartmentalize God. Sunday mornings, yes, a crisis, of course, but a work meeting, a grocery store, a casual conversation with a friend. I never imagined God was in those moments too. I thought I had to invite him in, like I was doing him a favor. But the truth is, he never left. He was already there, waiting for me to notice. I remember once walking into a situation where I was completely unprepared, outnumbered, underestimated, and overwhelmed. Normally, I would have panicked, but something shifted in me. Instead of rehearsing worst-case scenarios, I took a breath and reminded myself, God is with me, right now, in this room. That awareness gave me strength I didn't know I had. I didn't need to feel brave. I just needed to remember I wasn't alone. There's something sacred about ordinary moments when you live with that kind of awareness. Washing dishes, folding laundry, sitting in traffic. These moments used to feel like wasted time. Now, they're quiet spaces where I talk to God, and more importantly, where I hear from him. I don't need to be in a church pew to be in his presence. I just need to be present. That shift, seeing God as a constant companion rather than a distant authority, has made me more intentional. I don't speak carelessly anymore. I don't move on autopilot. I try to live in a way that honors the fact that the King of the universe is literally walking with me. Every decision, every interaction, every thought, I bring them before him, not out of fear, but because I value the relationship. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware. God isn't watching with a clipboard, ready to tally up my mistakes. He's watching like a loving father, delighted when I remember he's near. I've learned that when I tune into his presence, I make better choices. I find peace faster. I treat people better. I forgive more easily. Not because I've become someone holier, because I've become someone more aware. There's a confidence that comes from walking with God daily. Not a loud, arrogant confidence, but a steady, quiet one. The kind that doesn't crumble when people doubt you. The kind that doesn't retreat when life gets messy. The kind that keeps you grounded when everything else is shaking, because you know who walks beside you. And you know he's not going anywhere. I've also found that God speaks most clearly when I stop trying to force the moment. I used to chase mountaintop experiences, thinking God only showed up in dramatic ways. But now I know he whispers in the mundane. A thought, a nudge, a pause. I've learned to trust those moments because they come from a place of relationship, not performance. When you live like God is with you, your prayer life changes too. It becomes less about formality and more about frequency. I talk to him while I'm walking, while I'm eating, while I'm struggling. I don't wait until I have it all figured out. I bring him into the process. And the beautiful thing is, he wants that. He never asked me to clean up before coming close. He just asked me to come. There's freedom in that. Knowing that I don't have to earn his presence. I don't have to manufacture some spiritual high. I just have to be real. And in that realness, I've discovered something powerful. When I live like God is with me, I stop being afraid of what's against me. There will always be challenges, critics, delays, disappointments. But I face them differently now because I know I'm not facing them alone. I'm not fighting for victory. I'm fighting from a place of victory. God's presence gives me that confidence, not because I deserve it, but because he promised it. And his promises aren't seasonal. They're eternal. He said he'd never leave me. He said he'd walk with me through the fire, through the valley, through the storm. And he has. Time and time again, even when I didn't feel him, even when I doubted, even when I strayed, he stayed. So now I live like he's with me because he is. I plan with him. I cry with him. I laugh with him. I fail in front of him and get back up with his help. And every day I try to live aware that heaven is closer than I think, and that the presence of God isn't a reward for good behavior. It's a promise fulfilled through love. And if you're reading this wondering if he's with you too, he is. whether you feel him or not, whether you believe in yourself or not, whether you've done everything right or messed it all up. He's there, quietly, faithfully, there. The moment you stop living like God is somewhere far away and start living like he's right beside you, everything shifts. Peace grows, fear shrinks, purpose becomes clearer, and life becomes sacred, because every moment is shared with the one who made you. I spent years chasing things I thought would give my life meaning. Success, approval, money, recognition. I thought purpose was something I'd find at the end of a long road lined with achievements. But it always felt just out of reach. The more I accomplished, the more empty I felt. It wasn't until I started living with the awareness of God's presence every single day that I discovered something radical. My purpose wasn't somewhere far off. It was always with me, because he was always with me. The moment I acknowledged God wasn't just up there watching me from a distance, but right here, walking beside me, something shifted. Life didn't feel random anymore. My struggles had context. My gifts made sense. Even my pain had weight and value. I began to see my life not as a series of disconnected events, but as a carefully designed path created by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. When you live like God is present, your vision sharpens. You stop asking, what do I want to do with my life? And start asking, God, what did you create me to do? That one question changed everything for me. It made me pay attention. It made me listen. It made me surrender. And in that surrender, I found clarity. Purpose isn't just about doing big things. It's about doing the small things with eternal impact. When I started acknowledging God's presence daily, I realized that purpose is often hidden in the mundane. A conversation, a decision, a step of faith. Suddenly, things I used to overlook became sacred opportunities. I wasn't just going to work. I was walking into an assignment. I wasn't just raising kids. I was stewarding future leaders. I wasn't just surviving. I was building something that would outlive me. Before that shift, I thought purpose had to look impressive. I wanted something loud, something noticeable. But God showed me that purpose often starts in silence, in obedience, in being faithful with what's right in front of me. When I stopped chasing attention and started chasing alignment, that's when everything clicked. God never needed me to be famous. He needed me to be faithful. And being faithful means showing up, even when it doesn't feel exciting. It means trusting God's plan, even when it's slow. I've learned that every delay has purpose. Every detour is preparation. And every moment spent with God is never wasted. When I started living with the awareness that God is with me, I stopped measuring success by worldly standards. I started measuring it by obedience. Sometimes we wait for a sign, a confirmation, a door to swing open. But the truth is, purpose awakens the moment you say, yes, God, I know you're here, and I trust you to lead. That simple acknowledgement opens your eyes to things you never noticed before. The people you're meant to bless, the gifts you're meant to grow, the wounds you're meant to heal, not just in others' self, but in yours. I used to pray, God, show me what you want me to do. Now I pray, God, show me where you already are and help me join you. That shift in mindset has brought so much peace. I don't feel like I'm striving anymore. I'm not forcing my way into rooms I was never meant to be in. I'm walking with God step by step and trusting that He knows the way. There were seasons where I felt stuck, lost, like I missed it, like I wasted too much time. But God's presence reminded me, purpose doesn't expire. As long as I'm breathing, there's still something for me to do. Something specific, something divine. And I don't have to figure it all out today. I just have to stay close to the one who already has. I've learned to pay attention to the things that steer my spirit, the things that break my heart, the moments that make me come alive. That's often where God is pointing. He doesn't always speak through a megaphone. Sometimes He speaks through a burden, a dream, a whisper that won't go away. And when I bring those moments to Him in prayer, His presence brings clarity. Purpose is not a one-time revelation. It evolves, but it always grows stronger the closer you walk with God. The more I include Him in my day-to-day life, the more I discover about who I really am and who I'm not. His presence strips away comparison. It silences the voices that say I'm not enough. It reminds me that I was created for a reason, and that reason is rooted in relationship, not performance. When you like God is with you, your life becomes intentional. You stop wasting energy on things that don't align. You stop saying yes to everything just to be liked. You move with purpose. You speak with conviction. You lead with love because you know the one who made you is guiding every step. and he doesn't make mistakes. There's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're not wandering aimlessly. You're walking with purpose. On purpose, because God's presence, everything meaning. Even your mess, even your missteps, nothing is wasted when it's surrendered to him. That's the power of living every day like God is with you. I look back now at the times I felt most lost, and I realized God was shaping something in me. I thought I was delayed, but I was being developed. I thought I was off course, but I was in training, and the moment I recognized his presence, even in the confusion, I began to see purpose where I once saw pain. So if you're still searching, still wondering what your purpose is, don't start with a plan. Start with presence. Acknowledge God, invite him in, walk with him daily, and watch how he turns your ordinary steps into an extraordinary story, not because of who you are, but because of who walks with you. For a long time, I treated faith like a weekend event. Sunday mornings were wholly structured, predictable. I'd put on my best clothes, smile like I had it all together, and sit through a service where I'd feel inspired for a moment. But by Monday morning, it was back to the same old routine. Stress, distractions, doubts. I kept faith in a box labeled church, and it stayed there 6 days a week. I didn't realize that faith wasn't meant to be part-time. It was never supposed to be a ritual. It was always supposed to be a lifestyle. That realization didn't come from a sermon. It came in the middle of a week I thought I wouldn't survive. Everything was falling apart. Relationships, finances, peace of mind. I didn't have the luxury of waiting for Sunday. I needed God on a Wednesday night in my car with tears running down my face. That's when it hit Meg. If my faith only works when the chair is singing and the preacher is preaching, then maybe I don't actually have faith. Maybe I just have a habit. And habits can't save you when life collapses. So I started small. I woke up one morning and instead of reaching for my phone, I whispered, God, walk with me today. That was it. No fancy prayer, no performance, just a desperate invitation. And something changed, not around me, but in me. I felt a calm I couldn't explain. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, present. That was the beginning of turning my faith from a weekend event into a daily lifestyle. I started talking to God throughout my day, not just when I needed something, but in the ordinary moments. God, help me in this meeting. God, I'm tired. Give me strength. God, I'm thankful for this meal, this moment, this breath. Faith became a conversation, not a ceremony. It became a lens through which I saw everything. My work, my relationships, my struggles. Suddenly I wasn't dividing my life into spiritual and secular. Everything was spiritual. Every moment mattered. I began to see how often I had limited God to a time slot. 1 hour on Sunday, a few minutes before bed, maybe a quick prayer before a meal. But now, I wanted him in every part of my life. I needed him in every part of my life. And the more I included him, the more I realized that faith isn't just belief. It's movement. It's how I respond. It's how I speak. It's how I love people who are hard to love. It's how I forgive when I want revenge. It's how I show up when I want to shut down. Faith, real faith, shows up on the days when it's hard. When prayers go unanswered. When doors don't open. When people walk away. It's easy to believe when everything's going right. But faith becomes real when everything's falling apart, and you still say, God, I trust you. Not because it feels good, because you've built your life on a foundation that doesn't shake when your world does. I had to unlearn a lot of things, like the idea that faith was about feelings. Some days I don't feel inspired. Some days I don't feel anything at all. But that doesn't mean God isn't working. It means my faith has to go deeper than emotion. I had to anchor it in truth, in promises, in history. Because when I look back, I saw a pattern God never failed me. Not once. That gave me the confidence to walk into each day with faith as my default, not my backup. I didn't wait for a crisis to believe. I didn't wait for a church service to worship. I didn't wait for the weekend to read his word. I started building my life on daily encounters. And those encounters didn't always feel supernatural. Sometimes it was just the peace I felt in the middle of chaos. Sometimes it was the strength to do the right thing when the wrong thing looked easier. Sometimes it was the conviction to stay silent when I wanted to lash out. Faith began to look less like a performance and more like a posture of humility, of dependence, of trust. I didn't have to pretend to have all the answers. I just had to stay close to the one who does. And that's the difference between a lifestyle and a ritual. A ritual can be faked. A lifestyle can't. A lifestyle shapes your choices. It transforms your character. It changes your priorities. I also stopped comparing my journey to others. Faith isn't one size fits all. Some people have loud faith, others have quiet, steady faith. Mine became personal, intimate, something I carried with me like a compass, not a crutch, but a guide. It didn't make me perfect, it made me anchored. Now, when people ask what's changed in me, I tell them this: I stopped treating faith like a weekend thing. I made it my way of life. I made room for God in the mundane, not just the miraculous. I didn't wait for Sundays to worship. I worshipped in my car, in my kitchen, on my worst days, especially on my worst days. And I've discovered that's where the power really is, not in the performance, but in the presence. When faith becomes your lifestyle, you stop needing to chase spiritual highs. You live in daily dependence, daily intimacy, daily surrender. And that's where peace lives. That's where purpose grows. That's where transformation begins. So no, faith isn't a Sunday event for me anymore. It's my rhythm, my language, my source. I breathe in the morning and carry it into the night, not perfectly, but intentionally. And that's made all the difference. I used to chase peace like it was something I could earn. If I worked hard enough, if I fixed every problem, if I controlled every outcome. I thought peace came from getting life right and power came from getting stronger. But I was wrong. Peace isn't found in control. And power doesn't come from striving. Both come from intimacy with God, not distance, not religion, not performance, just closeness. That's the lesson life had to teach me the hard way. I remember a season where everything around me looked fine on the outside, but inside I was unraveling. I was exhausted, constantly anxious, feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world. I had the schedule. I had the structure. I even had the scripture memorized. But I didn't have intimacy with God. I had knowledge without connection. And it wasn't enough. Everything changed the day I stopped performing and started being real. I sat alone in silence with no fancy words and just said, God, I don't know what I'm doing, but I need you for real. That simple, broken, honest moment became the beginning of something sacred. For the first time, I wasn't trying to impress God. I was just trying to know him. And in that stillness, I didn't hear a booming voice or feel lightning in my bones, but I did feel peace, not because my life changed instantly, but because I knew I wasn't facing it alone anymore. That's what intimacy with God does. It doesn't remove the storm, but it changes the way you stand in it. You stop panicking and you start trusting. You stop striving and you start resting. It's not weakness. It's strength from another source. And once you've tasted it, you'll never settle for shallow religion again. For too long, I thought intimacy with God was reserved for pastors, prophets, or super spiritual people. I didn't think someone like me could be close to him. But I've learned that God doesn't play favorites. He responds to hunger. And when you pursue him, not just for blessings, not just for answers, but for who he is, you tap into a power that the world can't replicate. I started talking to God like a friend. No filters, no pressure to say the right thing, just honesty. God, I'm angry. God, I'm tired. God, I'm afraid. And what I found wasn't judgment, it was presence. Gentle, patient, healing presence. I didn't have to fake it. I didn't have to get it all right. I just had to show up. The more I did, the more I realized I was changing. Not because I was trying to change, because I was spending time with the one who transforms. His peace began to soften my edges. His truth silenced the lies I had believed about myself for years. And his power filled the places I had been trying to fix on my own. Intimacy with God isn't about being perfect. It's about being close. And closeness takes time. I didn't wake up one day and become spiritually strong. I had to build that relationship moment by moment, like any other relationship that matters. Some days it felt powerful. Other days it felt quiet. But over time, I realized that those quiet, consistent moments were where the real strength was built. There's something unshakable about someone who knows God personally, not just in theory, not just through someone else's words, but for themselves. You can hear it in the way they speak. You can see it in how they respond to pressure. They don't crumble easily. They're grounded, rooted. They don't need to prove anything. They just walk in quiet confidence because they know who walks with them. That's the kind of power I wanted, not the flashy kind, not the controlling kind, but the kind that holds steady in chaos. And that's exactly what intimacy with God gives you. It doesn't make you untouchable, but it makes you unshakable. I've had moments since then where everything around me felt like it was falling apart, but something inside me was steady. That was new. That was peace. Not from a perfect situation, but from a perfect presence. I didn't need all the answers. I just needed to stay close to the answer. That nearness, That intimacy became my safe place, my strength, and my anchor. I used to think I had to fight for peace. Now I know I just have to remain in his presence. I used to think I had to earn power. Now I know it flows through surrender. The closer I am to God, the more I reflect him. The more I reflect him, the less I react to everything else. That's power. That's peace. This kind of relationship doesn't come from checking a box or following rules. It comes from a decision to make room, to shut out the noise, to listen, to invite God into the ordinary moments, not just the crisis ones, to sit with him in silence, to let him speak, to open the word and read it not for information, but for connection. If you're tired, overwhelmed, constantly trying to keep it all together, maybe what you need isn't a better plan. Maybe you just need to get closer, not to religion, not to routine, but to God. Talk to him, be honest, stay consistent, and watch what happens when peace and power stop being things you chase and start becoming the natural result of the relationship you've built. Intimacy with God is where strength is born. Not the kind that comes from striving, but the kind that comes from abiding. And once you learn to live from that place, everything else starts to make sense. The storm may not stop, but you'll stop fearing it because you'll know who's in the boat with you.